So my name's Stuart Henry. I'm a litigation lawyer and part of the council here at Bristol Law Society. And I'm joined today by Cath, Mumby and Andy Loader, part of Schroders Personal Wealth, to talk us through financial well-being, which is a topic I'm sure close to all our hearts. After all, by the time we start work, we've already spent a small fortune in course fees, tuition fees, so on and so forth. Crying as we see the amount of student loan that comes out each month. And I think from that point onwards, we're very aware of the needs for financial planning. But of course, we're naturally drawn to law because of our detest of numbers. Otherwise, we'd all be doing accountancy courses. So it can sometimes be a little bit out of our wheelhouse, daunting, uninteresting, and engaging. But it is a vital part of our life skills and career progression to have in mind some of those touch points where we need to receive the proper advice and things. So without any further ado, I will briefly mention the fact that there is the Q&A function. Should you have any questions that you wish to pitch throughout the course of things, I'm sure some will come to mind as we hear the speakers. So do feel free to use those and we'll try to clear some of those up at the end. But I shall now hand over to my colleagues here to take you through the thrilling ride that is financial planning for all of us in the legal sector.
Thank you, Stuart. My name's Rebecca Tregarth and I'm not Cath, and it's just perfect timing because through all the technical hitches, Cath managed to get through and she's just joined us. So before Cath and Andy kick off the presentation, just to say that it's really brilliant to be able to partner with the Bristol Law Society for this particular webinar. I've only been with Schroders Personal Wealth since January, but I can tell you now that having heard what the guys are saying about financial planning and being immersed in it, it is quite the most important thing to have. However simple it may be, starting from scratch, our advisors can assist, but it is an absolutely essential tool to have. So very much looking forward to hearing your questions on the back of what we're presenting. So over to Cath.
Thank you, Rebecca. Apologies for the late entrance. I'm not too sure what button I finally managed to hit to get myself onto the Zoom meeting today, but there we go. Exactly as Rebecca said, it's really important more than ever before that we are in a position where we can help people with their longer term financial planning goals. Little bit of background from me. I'm a personal wealth advisor in Bristol. I've been providing financial planning advice to people since 1994. I know I don't look anywhere near that old, do I? And I'm very proud to say that I've helped clients to retire early, protect against the unexpected, and also to help them secure their financial future for themselves and their family. I'll let Andy introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Andy Loader, very much like Cath. I'm a personal wealth advisor working out of Bristol. Again, I've been in the industry since I left school, so approaching 34 years now, and I've been providing advice since 1996.
Great, thanks, Andy. If we can move on to the next slide, thank you. Let's start by giving a little bit of background as to where Schroders Personal Wealth have come from. We were actually born in 2019, so we're still a reasonably new business, and born from Lloyds Banking Group, who I'm sure we all know, and an investment company called Schroders. So Lloyds have been committed for some time in helping people with their longer term financial planning, and look to see how they were best placed to do that. So joined forces with Schroders, who wanted to get into the advice part of the market to build this brand new business. We're 50.1% owned by Lloyds, 49.9% owned by Schroders. So those businesses continue to trade and work as they always have. They're our parents, if you like, and they're fully committed to us giving the best possible service and advice to people in the UK. And you can see there's some facts and figures on the screen. There's over 400 years of heritage between Lloyds and Schroders, so we're quite old as a business. We've got over 13.76 billion funds under management, so we should know what we're doing. And the good news is we're local, so we've got over 300 advisors located around the UK across 11 regional offices, Bristol being one of those regional offices, and we are in a fastly expanding area, so that we're recruiting to be able to meet demand all the time. Next slide, please, Andy. In 2020, we published our first Money and Mind report. And this was in association with the Warwick Business School, where we interviewed 2,000 adults across the UK during August of that year. And the 4 main areas that we were looking at and asking people to score themselves against were getting the basics right, managing my debt, protecting against the unexpected, and planning for the future. And sadly, as you can see there on the right hand side, 48% of UK adults felt regularly or occasionally stressed or overwhelmed due to their financial situation. 58% would like to save, 25% have low financial confidence, 65% would like to be debt free. I'd imagine that's the majority of us with mortgages. And 27%, so almost a third, said that money worries actually impacted their performance at work. And yet, sadly, it's probably the one area that we don't talk about in terms of mental well-being. We generally wouldn't talk to people around finances. And that was the one thing that really highlighted to us, for us to be able to say as a business, well, how can we help? How can we help this? Next page, please. Thank you. We're here to help you build a better future, whatever that is. And it's a completely individual state, isn't it? Because not one person's financial goals for the future will be the same as the next person's. So it's very, very individual to you. And our vision, as you can see there, is to see a society where everyone recognises the value of a great financial plan. We aim to help more people across the UK to build their financial plans. And we want to help you to realise your dreams by unlocking the power of financial planning. Thank you. So feeling in control of your financial future, it's an interesting statistic, isn't it, in terms of the amount of people that worry or are stressed with their financial future. And it's fair to say that whilst we may plan our education, our career, our next house move, it's probably fair to say that most of us would spend more time planning holidays when we're allowed to go than we would our financial future. And how, you know, the sorts of questions that you may ask yourself is, what's your career going to look like in the future? How am I going to be able to buy into a partnership or extend a firm at some point? When do I want to do that? How am I going to be able to do that? When do I want to think about stopping work? And what does retirement look like? How am I going to be able to fund to do the things that I want to do? And how do I make sure that I am protected and my loved ones are protected should something happen? How much better would we feel if we had a plan so we know how we can achieve our dreams? I want us to have a look at the next slide and just have a look at this quote and what it means to you. And this is exactly really where we come in, because it's fair to say that if any of us were asked if we wanted to earn more money, we would all put our hands up and say, yes, absolutely, of course we would. But I suppose the question is why? Why is it important? And so financial well-being is not about having the most money. It's about having enough money to enjoy the things in life that make you happy. And that's where we come in. And that's really exactly what we're all about in terms of your financial plans. So if we look at the next slide, these are some of the things that you may well ask yourself through life's journey. So at the very beginning on the left hand side is about starting out. So it's starting to think about what your career may look like. Have you got the job that you're after? Do you want promotion? How are you going to be able to achieve that? Do you need any help with that? You're going to then build your career to the pinnacle until the point that you get to the stage that you're satisfied with where you are. And you might start thinking then around family and saving for houses, deposits, that type of thing. Then you're going to start thinking about retiring and what could that look like? Big question a lot of our clients ask is, will I have enough money for retirement? And what does that actually look like? And then when we retire, how do we make best use of the money that we have so that it lasts? It gives us all the choices that we want and allows us to do the things we want, until eventually we start thinking about passing that wealth on down to the family. The next slide is quite a busy slide, but I'm going to start on the right hand side, which is, where do you want life to take you? And to remember that actually money is just the fuel for the rocket for us to get there. So a few tips really on the left. So the really good starting point with any type of financial planning is to review your household expenses. So what money do you actually need to live on to cover your expenses, your basic expenses, but also your leisure expenses, so those holidays and the trips to the pub and the restaurants and the theatres when we're able to get back out there. And to make sure you have an emergency fund. So it is at the bottom, it says expect emergencies. We should all plan to make sure that we've got some money in place so that if there is an emergency, we've got some backup. Organise your finances, so make sure that you save regularly any excess income that you have. Maximise any pension contributions that you have with your employer to any matched schemes that they may run for you. And saving not only necessarily in a cash savings account, but also maybe into investment plan if you're able to do so. And then start thinking about creating a plan, and this is where we come in. So understanding where you are today, where it is you want to get to, and how it is you're going to be able to get there. And Andy's going to cover that off a little bit later. Keeping your plan on track, expecting emergencies, and obviously taking advice regularly. My glamorous assistant was a little bit hasty there with moving the slides on. Thanks, Andy. So you can move on now. So helping to bring you closer to your dreams. I thought this would be a good time to just give you a few examples of how I've helped clients recently, actually. One client was a divorced lady, just inherited some money from her dad, worked 4 days a week, desperate to drop to 3 days a week, and really wanted to retire earlier than she thought at 65. We actually put a plan in place that meant not only could she immediately drop to her 3 days a week, but she could actually retire 3 years earlier than she thought, which she's absolutely delighted with. I had some business owners who were looking to sell their business and wanted to get some money out of their business as tax efficiently as possible without having to pay huge tax on it. And my plan enabled them to take out 350,000 tax-free out of their business and into plans in their own name over about a 14-month period, which again, they're absolutely delighted with. And then recently I had a client who sadly inherited quite a sum from her late husband, and my planning meant that I'd potentially reduced her inheritance tax bill by about 120,000, which the husband had said to her on her deathbed, we want to make sure the children are covered should something happen to you. That's exactly what we've done. So that's a few sort of examples. On to the next slide. This is really looking at how we work with you. And I think what's key here is that we work with you at a time that's right for you. So is it right that you take your financial planning advice at this point in time? Are you in the right position to be able to do so? We get to know you and to understand what's important to you. We work with you to set goals. And again, you'll see that with Andy's demonstration in a moment or so. We then present our plan to you. So this is your plan, and it's a movable feast. And then we would meet with you regularly to assess whether or not it's still on track. And actually, are there changes in circumstances? Have your goals changed? Amounts changed? What can we do to help you along the way? And obviously make any necessary changes that we need to. I'm now going to hand over to Andy, who's actually going to give us a really good demonstration as to how we put a plan together, and after which we'll open it up to any questions and answers. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Cath. So this is the system that we use. It's a system called Voyant, and it's a modelling tool. So what it enables us to do is put all of the client's financial information down the left-hand side, and then build a plan around their needs and what they're looking to achieve. It's a really interactive plan. It starts off blank. I've got a case study here, which I've put together, which is a gentleman aged 26, just really starting out in his career, probably wanting to get married in the not too distant future, so maybe around age 30, and then possibly look to buy a house, hoping to get promoted in the next 5 years or so, and he might want to buy a couple new cars as time goes on. He's really hoping for his career to progress, so going into his 40s, he's hoping to become a partner. And then at the moment, he's thinking he's probably going to have to work until age 68, with a mortality age of 85. Now, the really good thing about this system is that we can drop different things in. So if you want to do some home improvements, or if you want to buy a boat or go on a long cruise, we can drop that in and we can put that in as an expense. The other thing that we can do is we can move things like the mortality age. So if you feel that there's long mortality in your family, then that can be extended. And if you feel that you've got poor health and you don't think it's going to be as long, then we can bring that a little bit closer. So it's fully flexible as far as that's concerned. It's different stages of life down the right hand side here, so we can take into consideration things like long-term care, preparing to retire. So if you wanted to maybe start working part-time, if you wanted to do some world traveling, if the children are leaving home, then we can add in periods of time along there as well. So once we've got all the information and the plans along the bottom here, we can then start formulating the client's information. So we would start by putting in their current salary. If we click on here, we can increase the salary or decrease the salary as time goes on. So if there's a promotion maybe that comes a little bit later on the line, then we can factor in what we think the income is going to be there, and then another promotion, and then maybe when retirement comes in and the income stops. Likewise, we can do savings. We can put savings in here, and this will be inflation linked. So the savings will be linked to a savings rate, and income outgoings will all be inflation linked as well. So it is future proofed. We can put investments in, we can put pensions, and with the pensions we can put in the amount that's being contributed by the individual and by the employer. We can put state pensions in, and then we can also put in property expenses. So we can put in the normal bills, we can also put in any leisure, and we can stop that at any time as well by using these events just here. So we can have a start date, and we can have maybe an end date when they would want to stop traveling. So really flexible, and a plan that can work really well with the individuals. So once we put all this information in, this will then provide for us a view of their projected cash flow. So within here, just to explain a few of these icons, firstly, everything on here is based on assumptions. The actual returns may be materially different because we do work on assumed growth rates, we do work on assumed interest rates, and also inflation. But just to explain, we have this pale blue line here, that's basic outgoings, and then we have the black line, which is the total outgoings. As you can see, there's a few spikes here. So I've put in a spike for a wedding. And I've also put in a spike for maybe when you want to buy a house and there's a deposit needed, and then maybe if he wanted to become a partner in the firm later on, then he might need to put some money in as far as that's concerned as well. And then there's other areas for new cars and so on. The blue, this sort of mid-color blue here, that's his income. And then when retirement comes in, we then have navy blue here along the bottom, which is state pension, and then the income from his pension as well, his works pension. The good news is that he's looking at this, he's unlikely to run out of any money in the future. So his pension income should be sufficient for what he needs, but he has got these red spikes which are coming in where we're looking at maybe needing some money for a house deposit, and also looking at money to become a partner. So what we can then do is we can create what we call what ifs. So that effectively means we mirror the base plan, and then we will start to create some recommendations and some ideas around what he could be doing. So what I've done is I've just considered, okay, he's got some excess income available at the moment. What would happen if he put some of his savings that he's got, maybe £10,000 of them, so he's still got a bit of an emergency fund, put about £10,000 of them into a stocks and shares ISA, and then started saving into that on a monthly basis for as long as he can. So what we then look at is the scenario that would happen in that case. So what happens is, as you can see, and actually if I compare the plans, then the top plan is the plan when he's looking at some savings. The bottom plan would be once he's put the savings in place. So as you can see, where there was red in the plan initially, because he didn't have enough money for his deposit for a house, then what he's done by saving money, he's got this blue which has come in, and that means that there's sufficient money in his ISA. And if I look on here, this will show us under investments how much money he's got in his ISA, showing us about £80,000 there. That would be sufficient for him to actually use that for the deposit of a new property. Continues to save, and then maybe when he wants to become a partner in the future, he's then got again money in his ISA, which would then be used, that he could then use to maybe fund the cost of going into the partnership. We do see, speak to a lot of our commercial Lloyd's colleagues, and they do refer a lot of people across to us because they've borrowed money because they want to join a partnership, or there's something that they haven't planned for. And what this does, it just means that he can plan that much further ahead. The other thing, which is really interesting, by just making that change, so that was putting £1,000 a month into a stocks and shares ISA and moving that £10,000 across, has also meant that his retirement age can move from 68 down to 57. So a little bit where Cath was showing previously, where our planning can help people with their needs, and also with retiring that little bit easier, that little bit earlier. As I said before, these are all based on assumptions, so there's no guarantees as far as that's concerned. One thing I would say is we use this system with all of our clients. I did have a client recently who was a little bit unsure as to what they could do as far as inheritance tax planning was concerned. They were concerned that if they started to gift money away, that they might not have enough money for the rest of their lives. So what I was able to do was use the system. They were still a little bit concerned about gifting money, but it was clear that they didn't need the growth on that money. So all we've done at the moment is created a loan trust so that the capital is still available for them, but any growth on that trust that we've put in place is now outside of the estate, and they can move that across into a loan trust if they, into a gift trust in the future if they wanted to, and they could access the money during their lifetimes as well. So that's the Voyant system. Hopefully you'll agree it's a pretty interactive system, and it's really good to play around with different scenarios when you're looking to see exactly what you can do. So let me just go back to our presentation. So a couple of areas which may be of interest for you. So feel free if you want to jot down these websites. The Wealth Lens is available through spw.com. There's various different articles which are available on there. It's topical issues, look at investing and investment themes, also looking at retirement planning, preparing for school fees and university fees, passing on your wealth. There's also webinars which have been we've done previously, things like economic and investment outlook, US elections when that was appropriate. We did a lot around Brexit when that was all happening, and inheritance tax and gifting. So really good way if you want to just get a bit of an insight, just to have a look back on the previous webinars that we've done, and you can also register for upcoming webinars as well if that would be of interest to you. Just as far as myself and Cath are concerned, these are our contact details here, so we're more than happy to have a conversation with you at any time. You can either email us at our email addresses there, which are nice and straightforward, or you've got our telephone numbers if you wanted to contact us. And more than happy to have a 15-20 minute, half an hour chat with you initially, just to talk through what we can do, see how that might fit in with you, and see if it's appropriate for you. Thank you very much.
I think we're going to head over to some questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a couple of questions that came in ahead of time. The first of which was the top 3 things to do at the start of your career for long-term financial health. Now, obviously, that's going to come with a caveat that everyone's circumstances will be different and there's no one-size-fits-all approach. But I wonder if there are some general focus areas that you can perhaps put in people's minds for them at the early days of their career that will really do them the benefit long-term.
I'll take that one, if you like. I think it's fair to say, and this could be for anybody in any career, in any walk of life, to regularly, and I say regularly, annually, complete an income and expenditure. So look at what your income is and what your fixed expenditure is and what you then generally spend, because most people probably are like me. You get your salary, you know what your fixed expenditure is in terms of your bills and your mortgage, maybe, or your rent, and then the rest of it just goes and you don't necessarily know where it's going. So I would say number one is complete an income and expenditure. Know what income you've got, know what you've got able to save, and within your savings, number one is to have an emergency fund, and we would usually say 3 months worth of salary is what you should have as an emergency fund. So if something happens to the car or something like that, you suddenly need some money, you've got some money to pull upon. But also then have a little bit of a slush fund in addition to that, and have an idea as to what sort of things you're going to need to save for. So whether it be, you know, a holiday, a car, or actually, yes, you are thinking longer term that you're going to be buying into a partnership at some point, have an idea as to what sort of things you're going to be saving for. So then you can use any sort of cash savings availability, so cash ISAs, etc. Or if you've got the opportunity to be able to save a little bit longer term and get a better return on your money, you've got the opportunity of investment plans. But also think from a very early age, am I maximising any pension contributions that the company are going to make for me? And this is key, because it's fair to say that when you're quite young, you generally don't think about retiring. You think, oh, I'll worry about it when I'm 50. But actually, money in from when you're early 20s, growing for a 40-year period, is going to give you obviously an awful lot more in the pot than money that you suddenly panic the last 5 years of your working life and you're trying to maximise any contributions. So maximise that as well. So know your income and expenditure, put an emergency fund into place, and then review regularly. So do think, I mean, I've got a pot of money which is for my garden furniture, which will probably be next year now, because we're not being able to get out in the garden this year. I've got a pot of money for my partner's 50th birthday, which is next year. And it's just the way I save is to have these pots so I know what the money is for. And you're less likely to pull upon it if you've got that named on your online banking, that pot of money is for that reason. And that's the very simplest of ways, really, to start putting a plan in place.
Great, thank you. And I think the next question was quite a niche one. It says, major fund managers, including Ray Dalio, predict a potentially colossal financial crisis following the massive money printing campaign in the US. How, if at all, do you take these predictions into account when structuring financial plans for your clients?
Yeah, I can have that one, Cath. Yeah, we take into consideration what could happen now and in the future. As Cath said, really important to make sure that you've got adequate savings in place. So cash savings, we mean by that. So money you can access if you need to. So money for emergencies and also for your planned spending. Anything where you were planning on spending money within the next 5 years, we wouldn't consider investing that. So we would only really consider investing if you're looking for more than 5 years. The next thing is to get the right risk profile in place. So we would go through a series of risk questions, and that would then give us a risk outcome of a score of 1 to 6, with 1 being the lowest and 6 being the highest. Now, if someone's going to panic when the markets do take a downturn, which inevitably they will at some stage, because they always do, they go in cycles, then it may be that we would invest less for them, or we would take a lower degree of risk, maybe something which wasn't as dependent upon the stock markets. So getting the right risk approach is right. And then once you've taken out the money that someone has for emergencies and also for planned spending, it's then still getting a balance of money that they're happy to invest versus money that they want to keep in cash savings. So you haven't got all your eggs in one basket. We do really feel that it's when it comes to investments, it's the time that you're invested in the markets rather than trying to time the markets. So people sometimes do come to us and say, oh, I'm going to wait for another couple couple of months just to see what happens, when in reality, if you're investing for 5-10 years, then it doesn't really matter so much what's going to happen tomorrow. It matters what happens over that next 5 and 10 years. The next thing we do, and I'll show you this actually on our Voyant system, is we can use something called a major market downturn. So if we look at the plan that we've got here, what I can do on the timeline, I can drop in a major loss, and we'll do that for every client that we look to invest for. So we bring in a major loss, and then what that will do, it will just look at the impacts that happened in the financial crisis back in 2000 to 2004, with the big downturn in the markets then, and it will just model what happened in that situation and see exactly how that would affect the plan that we've put in place. And then lastly, it's building in regular reviews. So making sure that this is reviewed on at least a yearly basis, so that if there has been a downturn, you know whether it's a long-term downturn or whether it's going to be a shorter-term downturn. We've got a lot of our existing ongoing clients, and obviously we've worked really closely with them during COVID. I think there was a fair amount of concern back in March time when the markets did really take a big dip. And we spent a lot of time speaking to our clients just to make sure that they were comfortable with what was happening and understood what was happening, and then work with them as the markets began to improve again. But we've got the tools in place to be able to do that.
I think you frozen. I don't know, Stuart, did you see the graph that Andy was talking about, or was it frozen as well?
I didn't see the graph there, it froze, but I didn't want to interrupt Andy's flow back, so I might be able to try bringing it back up.
That's fine, but I promise we do have one.
It's just a way, as Andy said, it's just a way of being able to say, well, actually, if there is a major downturn in the market, then does that impact on your plans, and we can model that as well. So that's what you would have seen.
You would have.
Right. Well, I think this next question probably has elements of the previous two in it, but it's just very simply, how do you help your clients set the right personal financial goals for them?
By having really good conversations around what their objectives are and what they're worried about. I mean, it's fair to say that I'd like to own an Aston Martin, and I've done a Voyant on that as to how much money I would have to save in order to get myself an Aston Martin, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Unless I have a lottery win, I'm not going to have an Aston Martin. And I suppose this is the beauty of that cash flow modelling, is that you can actually say, okay, well, if you want to have this, if you want to be able to save that amount of money, what do you need to put away to be able to do that? And that's the beauty of that. But I think so many times in the past, financial planning hasn't been so much about planning, it's been about products. And actually that's not where we come from. We come from a let's get to know you, let's get to find out what's important to you, and actually maybe now isn't the right time to be having that financial planning advice because there are other things going on in your life. I mean, one of the first things we find out is, have there been any changes in circumstances, which could be a bereavement, but could be a nice lottery win. It could be a change in work. It could be that you're just about to move. And actually, therefore, it's not the right time to be receiving that advice. And we move it back another 3 or 6 months until it is the right time. But yeah, getting to know and understand, and playing with the Voyant will tell us whether or not, yeah, that's achievable, or whether actually maybe that's not quite so achievable and we have to think again.
And that's, as you said, it's getting the risk right as well, isn't it? So it's getting that that's the one of the first things that we would do is just gauge that level of risk that the client's happy to take and work our plan around that.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that the attitude has changed. I mean, I know sort of when I started practice over a decade ago, it was very much a case of any financial planner you spoke to just tried to sell you all sorts of insurances, protections, and so on and so forth. And a complete shit, to take it away from you guys who are in that field, not to try to encourage people to do it. Personal experience is that, in recent years, when I've taken financial planning advice from a chap, I was really amazed that, when we had that conversation about, well, what is it you like to spend your money on? I work outside of law as a part-time musician, and I've quite like collecting rather expensive guitars. But he did sit down and we had a conversation. We said, well, look, once you've bought one of these things, you know, what does it sell for? And I said, well, pretty much what I paid for it if I bought it second hand. And some of the really old ones actually increased like antiques. He said, well, then why don't we set your budget so that you have that money available rather than having this old school attitude of, you know, you've got to sacrifice every piece of leisure spending you've got and scrimp and save, and that's the only way to do it. You just got to say, well, look, you know, if you have one less coffee a day, you can buy 2 more guitars a year, and actually that money ain't going to go anywhere, because historically they've always. So having those kind of conversations that really personalise it and make it a bit more realistic than I think what people expect, which is to go and be told, well, you're out at the pub twice a week buying 2 pints of time when you're home from work with some mates. If you cut that out, or if you cut back on smoking or whatever, you know, whatever it is that's a flavour of the month for you to give up your morning coffee and stick that into a pot, you'll be financially better off. And I think it's important to get across to people that that's not really the way advice is done these days. It's very much let's look at your lifestyle, let's look at how you maintain your lifestyle and how that might be a way to get you to live comfortably, but also make some sensible decisions to keep going on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Stuart.
Great. And I think one of the other probably things to highlight, I think, is again, for those who are younger in their careers, is just to really hammer home that piece of advice you've given, which I think is so important, of starting early. Because if people want to go away and start Googling some of the comparisons on early saving versus late savings, I mean, just a period of 5 years between 20 and 25 at very low amounts makes a huge difference at the end. And I think anybody I've done one of these sessions with or one of these webinars with has just hammered home the same piece of advice. Of, you know, get the advice early, get the plan early. It's not as big and sexy as I'm going to chuck all my money into Bitcoin and become an overnight millionaire, but it's proven to work longer term. And I think that's the real message that, you know, comes from you guys and your planning modelling there. Is it's about the long term, and it's about making sure that it's almost certain you'll be financially better off, rather than have a bit of a gamble on the next big thing.
Absolutely. And sometimes, Stuart, sometimes the course of action is not to do anything. And sometimes we come across clients that's exactly what we say. Actually, don't do anything more than what you're doing, because you're not able to, or what you've got in place at the moment is great, or whatever it may be. And I think that quite often surprises people, that and occasionally, you know, I say to clients, well, you need to spend your money. So people that are already retired, you know, that are still wanting the money to work for them, but I say, well, why aren't you spending it? Go and start spending it. When I see you next year, I don't want you to have this level of cash. I want you to have spent it and enjoyed it. I think they're quite surprised when we give them that advice as well.
I shall have to put you in touch with my other half and tell her that you've told me to do that. Because every time I spend it and come home.
I did say later on when
more guitars. Cath said buy more guitars.
I do always have to have that explanation, actually. Why do you need another one? Well, this one sounds a bit different to the other one. But I think that's the same no matter what your hobby is. But I think it's just important to kind of humanise that element of it, because it's, like I say, you're in an unfortunate position, much like lawyers, where I think public perception is that you do one thing, and actually the reality is you do a totally different thing, different approach. So, yeah, it's certainly worthwhile. Well, I think that wraps up all of the questions that we've had, I think. Unless there's any more, I will pause briefly to let anybody who's still tuned in fire in some last bits of advice. I don't think there's any others that are coming in. So I shall thank everybody very much for attending. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, speaking to our speakers there, before we part ways?
Just thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to come and speak to you. You know, we are here to help and provide advice, even if it's just to say that everything you've got is great. So please do reach out for us. And Stuart, we can give you our contact details if you've not already got them. You may already have them on the slides, and do feel free to pick the phone up to us and reach out if there's anything at all we can help with.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you very much to Cath and Andy for speaking and for joining us. And we shall see you all at the next webinar